You think you'd know. If a killer moved in next door, some instinct would prickle, some wrongness you'd feel. But the most dangerous man in New Jersey mowed his lawn on Saturdays and taught Sunday school. His neighbors kept reaching for the same word to describe him: boring, forgettable, nice enough. And for 18 years, that ordinariness was the perfect place to hide a triple murder. His name was John List, and in 1971 he lived in a mansion he couldn't afford. 19 rooms in Westfield, New Jersey, a ballroom, a Tiffany-stained glass skylight over the stairs. From the outside, the picture of a made man, an accountant, a churchgoer, a father of 3. Inside, the picture was rotting. He'd lost his job months earlier and told absolutely no one. Every morning he put on his suit, drove to the train station, and read the paper all day. He'd sit there for hours, then come home at the usual time, pretending he still had a job. The savings were gone, the mortgage was months behind, his own mother's money spent. A normal man, cornered like that, declares bankruptcy, swallows the shame, starts over. John List did the math differently, and the arithmetic he landed on is the horror of this story. In his mind, his family was sliding toward financial ruin, and worse, toward a godless world. So he convinced himself that killing them would send their souls straight to heaven, unspoiled. That he was saving them. That's the sentence you have to sit with to understand what came next. On the morning of November 9th, he made breakfast. He waited for the kids to leave for school. Then he shot his wife, Helen, in the kitchen. He reloaded and climbed to the attic apartment. His mother, Alma, was 85. He killed her up there and quietly closed the door. Then he did the ordinary things. He ate lunch, he wrote some letters, he waited for the children. His daughter Patricia came home first, 16 years old, and dreaming of being an actress. Then Frederick, 13. Later, he drove to watch his son John Jr. play a soccer game. He cheered from the stands like any father. Then he drove the boy home and killed him too. 15 years old. That was the last of them. 5 people, one afternoon, one quiet house. Here's where most killers run, panicked, leaving a scene that screams exactly what happened. John List did the opposite. He turned the murders into a chore and finished it methodically. He carried the 4 bodies into the ballroom and laid them on sleeping bags side by side. He scrubbed the blood. He cut his own face out of every family photograph in the house. He wrote a 5-page letter to his pastor, calmly explaining he'd sent them all to heaven. Then the detail that still unsettles investigators. He turned on the lights over the bodies. Every light in the ballroom left burning, and on the house intercom, he set the radio. Religious music playing on a loop, filling 19 empty rooms for whoever would find them. He turned the thermostat down low to slow decay. He wanted time. And time? He got, because he'd also stopped the mail, canceled the milk, told the school the kids were away. He wrote to relatives saying the family was visiting a sick grandmother down in North Carolina. Every thread that might tug at someone's attention, he tied off. Then he drove to the airport. He left his car at the airport and simply stepped out of his own life, no ticket in his name. For almost a month, the mansion sat lit and silent. Neighbors saw the lights and thought nothing. It was those lights burning out, one by one, that finally made someone curious enough to look. When police entered, the music was still playing. The bodies had lain there 29 days. And then nothing. No useful prints, no sightings, no body to find because he wasn't dead. His car at the airport made everyone assume he'd flown far away. He hadn't flown at all. He'd taken a train, west, to a new city and a new name and a job doing the one thing he knew: accounting. He became Robert Clark. And Robert Clark was, by every account, a pleasant, dull man. Think about the last stranger you spoke to for 5 minutes. Could you describe their face now? That's the camouflage he lived inside, utterly unmemorable. For 18 years, it worked perfectly. He remarried, went to church every Sunday, balanced other people's books, never raised his voice. The case went cold, ice cold. Detectives retired. The mansion burned down. The world moved on. 18 years later, a television producer decided to feature the forgotten case on a new show. But you can't hunt a man with a photo from 1971. He'd be nearly 60 now. Nobody knew that face. So they hired Frank Bender, a forensic sculptor who did something almost no one else could do. Bender didn't just copy old photos. He tried to sculpt what a face becomes after 2 decades. He worked with a criminal psychologist, Richard Walter, who studied the kind of man List was. Not just his bones, his personality, because Walter argued that a personality shapes a face. A man this rigid, this cheap, this self-satisfied wouldn't chase fashion or fuss over fitness. He wouldn't buy trendy glasses. He'd keep wearing the same sensible frames he'd always worn. So they guessed. They built a man out of psychology, anatomy, and carefully reasoned hunches. Bender added the receding hairline that age, and List's own family genes made almost certain. He sculpted the jowls, the softening jaw, the weight a sedentary desk man tends to put on. And Walter insisted on one detail: thick, dated, horn-rimmed glasses, a frugal man's frames. It was a bet. A clay face built from reasoning, not evidence. It could have looked like anybody. If this reframes how much a face can be rebuilt from just character, you're in the right place. That's what this channel is for, the small, strange details that crack impossible cases. Stick around. On May 21st, 1989, the show aired. Old photos first, then they turned the clay bust to camera. Millions of people were watching that night, and in one living room, a woman went completely still. Her name was Wanda. She had once lived beside a quiet, unremarkable couple named the Clarks. She looked at the bust, the hairline, the jowls, those exact horn-rimmed glasses, and felt cold. She turned to her family and said the thing that would finally end an 18-year manhunt. "That's Bob. That's our old neighbor, Bob Clark." She was sure. She had sat across from that face. She'd suspected him once before, years earlier, and let herself be talked out of it. Now she called. Here's the part that makes your skin crawl. The clay bust wasn't a perfect likeness of him. But it was close enough that a woman recognized a man she'd barely spoken to. The glasses were right. The receding hairline was right. The soft, jowled face was right. A sculptor who had never met John List had guessed the specific frame sitting on his nose. The FBI traced Robert Clark to Richmond, Virginia, a tidy suburban house, a steady accounting job. Agents knocked. A mild, balding man in horn-rimmed glasses opened the door and denied everything. He was calm, polite. He insisted they had the wrong man. His name was Bob Clark, he told them. But behind his ear sat an old surgical scar that matched John List's medical records exactly. And a fingerprint sealed it. The quiet accountant from Virginia was the killer from New Jersey. 18 years, and it ended not with a chase or a shootout, but with a face made of clay. At trial, John List finally explained himself, and it was worse than any raging confession. He was sorry, he said, not that he'd done it, but that he'd had to. He still felt justified. He believed he'd see his family in heaven, and that they'd forgive him for the door he opened. There was no monster in the room, just a tired accountant who'd balanced a ledger no one else saw. He was convicted on 5 counts of murder, 5 life sentences, set to run one after another. He died in prison, an old man, still insisting to the end that he had done the loving thing. So here's what the case actually leaves you with. And it isn't a lesson about locking your doors. It's that the face isn't the monster. List's face was the most ordinary thing about him. The instinct you trust, that you'd feel the wrongness, that evil looks like evil, is the camouflage. He hid for 18 years precisely because he looked like a man you'd forget at a bus stop. And what finally caught him wasn't a witness or some clue he'd carelessly left at the scene. It was a stranger reasoning carefully about what an ordinary man becomes when he gets old. Bender and Walter didn't find a fingerprint. They found a personality and sculpted its face. That a rigid, frugal man keeps his dated glasses, that one dull assumption, is what ended it. Next time you're sure you can read someone from how neat their lawn is, remember Bob Clark. Remember the lights left burning over the bodies and the church-going neighbor who mowed on Saturdays. The most terrifying people are rarely the ones who look the part. They're the ones you'd never notice. His family waited 18 years for a name and got it from a face made of guesses and clay. Next time, another case where the smallest overlooked detail turned out to be the whole answer. These lives deserve to be remembered. Like and subscribe so the next forgotten case isn't lost too.